Hello. Today I will talk about my book report on the book called The Smartest Guys in the Room, written by Bethany McLean and Peter Elkind. These are two investigative journalists who spent months digging through thousands of pages of documents and doing hundreds of interviews with executives, employees, auditors, and regulators. What they put together is one of the most detailed, eye-opening accounts of the Enron scandal that you'll find anywhere. Now, most people, when they hear Enron, just think accounting fraud, company went bankrupt, people went to jail. All of that is true, but this book really does go deeper than that. It's not just about the numbers behind the fraud, it's about the people, the culture, and the decisions made over more than a decade that made the whole collapse inevitable. So let me walk you through it. Enron was built on the foundation of deregulation in the natural gas industry in the 1980s. The founder and chairman, Kenneth Lay, was really good at identifying shifts in government policy and using them to the company's advantage. But from the very beginning, there were red flags. Lay routinely approved deals that benefited friends and family, which kind of set the tone for everything that came after this culture of entitlement and favoritism. Enron's early problems actually started in its oil trading division. What was supposed to be a legitimate hedging operation slowly turned into a speculative money machine. The guys running it, including Louis Bourget, was taking enormous risks on, but he was producing great returns, so nobody questioned him. And that's a pattern you'll see over and over in this story. As long as someone was making money, the culture made it almost impossible to challenge what they were doing. Eventually, Bourget's risks caught up with the company, forcing a multi-year restatement of financial results. Enron just barely survived this period. Then along comes Jeffrey Skilling, and this is really where the story shifts. Skilling came in as a consultant for McKinsey and quickly became the most powerful person at Enron. He was brilliant, at least on paper, but the book makes it pretty clear that his ideas often fell short on the execution side of things. His biggest move, and the one that set the stage for everything that followed, was convincing the SEC to let Enron use mark-to-market accounting for its trading operations. What mark-to-market accounting is that Enron could record estimated lifetime profits from a long-term deal on the day it was signed, even if no cash had changed hands, and even if the projections were wildly over-optimistic. That's a huge deal because it meant that the company could make its earnings look great without actually generating real cash, and many of these deals actually didn't work out. Skilling rose to president and CEO by 1996, and he pushed what he called an asset-light strategy, moving Enron away from owning physical infrastructure and leading into trading. He also sold off EOG, which was one of Enron's most reliable revenue divisions, because he didn't like the volatility of its earnings. He wanted to double down on this new expansion strategy, and that expansion failed badly, but those losses were hidden from investors. Inside the company, there was this relentless obsession with the stock price, and that obsession created a culture where financial deception became almost normal. There was a department called Risk Assessment and Control, the RAC for short, which was supposed to be a safeguard, but instead used unrealistic estimates to rubber stamp projects that no business had approved. And then there was this practice they called jamming quarters. Whenever Enron was about to miss analyst expectations, executives would scramble at the last minute to manufacture numbers good enough to hit the target. Just completely made up numbers, essentially, all to keep the stock price looking strong, going back to their obsession with the stock price. By late 2000, things were getting really hard to sustain. Enron had moved into telecom, and those ventures were essentially worthless, but through mark-to-market accounting, they were booking the full projected value of those deals as revenue. Meanwhile, CFO Andrew Fastow set up what the authors described as a series of shadow entities. They called these raptors, which were vehicles designed to hide billions of debt and bad assets off the balance sheet. The whole point was to keep investors in the dark about how bad things really were within the company. And while all of this was happening, Enron's traders were manipulating California's power grid during the energy crisis, intentionally creating artificial shortages that caused rolling blackouts and cost California consumers a fortune, all for the profit of Enron. It's one of the most disturbing parts of the book because it shows how completely the company had abandoned any sense of ethics. Eventually, it all started to unravel. Whistleblowers started speaking up. Executives were still publicly reassuring investors that everything was fine. They were also privately selling off their shares as fast as they could at this time. When investors figured out what was happening, the insider selling, the hidden losses through the Raptors, there was a panic. The stock cratered, and Enron's auditor, Arthur Andersen, which was supposed to be doing the independent watchdog, making sure the financial statements were accurate, responded by shredding thousands of documents related to the account, which did not help. Enron filed for bankruptcy in December of 2001. At this time, it was the largest bankruptcy filing in the U.S. history. Thousands of people lost their jobs. Many had their entire retirement savings in the company stock, which was now worthless, and the human toll was ultimately devastating. So what's the takeaway from all this? I think the biggest thing McLean and Elkind want you to walk away with from this book is that it wasn't a sudden collapse. The warning signs were there in the public filings, in the culture, and in the decisions being made every single day for over a decade. Enron wasn't brought down by one bad actor or one bad decision. It was the result of inflated egos, misaligned incentives, and a culture that rewarded performance over integrity and controls that were only as good as the people supposed to enforce them. The Enron scandal is still taught today because it's a masterclass in what happens when a company loses sight of ethics entirely, and this book does a really good job of making sure you understand not just what happened, but why it happened and why it should never be forgotten. Thank you.